I feel like when I met you, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, could it be you? But I did have the thought of like, oh, I'm kind of interested in him because I remember thinking, like you're handsome or whatever. But also I had the thought of, oh, I think he's too old for me.
Yeah. First impressions are an interesting thing because sometimes you know that you're going to be making a first impression. Mm-hmm. But
And
sometimes
catches you by surprise.
exactly, sometimes it gets kind of sprung on you and you're in this place where you're like, oh, I'm meeting this person for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I think that first impressions, like there's all those studies out there that say like, oh, first impressions are important, or someone makes a decision about who you are in the first 8 seconds of meeting,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. But we want to share a bit about our first impressions,
Of each other.
talk a bit about first impressions in general, and give people tips for first impressions in general. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the concept of first impressions?
I do think a first impression is really powerful.
Yeah.
But I do also think that someone shouldn't be written off just because their first impression. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe you just caught them at a bad moment.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, like I think first impressions are powerful, but I don't think necessarily if someone has a bad first impression, it's like
Unrecoverable.
yeah, you can't make it back from that. Mm-hmm. What was it like when we first met? Like, where were we? What did it feel like? Who approached who? What was the context?
Okay, so
Give us the backstory.
Daniel and I were both attending a conference in like a church setting, and you were coming for work, and I was coming mostly just to like attend the conference, see
You had
friends.
some mutual friends that
had
went
some
to-
mutual friends
Yeah.
with you, and yeah, and then so my first impression of you is our mutual friend like came to say hi to you, and then we kind of met, and I remember just being really wowed by who you were, and the depths of the things you talked about really caught my attention. And then I remember when I was walking away with my friend, I said to her, wow, he's really handsome. So
My first impression of you was great. You seemed like a humble person, a meek person. I remember we were talking about like what we're passionate about. I was specifically sharing about my career and what I was doing in the program I was starting. And I remember you being so interested and kind of genuinely like listening and taking in what I was saying. And yeah, I felt like it's just a really positive conversation. I think when I think about like my first impression of you, I think of like, yeah, someone who is a genuine person. Someone who I was like, oh, like this person has substance. And I remember that standing out to me because you can quickly tell in conversations with someone how deep they are, how substantial they are as a person. And I felt like, yeah, when I was talking to you, I was like, oh, this girl is legit. Like she has some substance to her. Thinking about our first impression, I think about, I guess, tips that I'd want to give people for their first impression. I think that like it's so important for people just to like have a measure of like understanding of like, I guess, fallback questions, because I think that like in our world where we're so hyper digital, especially post-pandemic, it's almost like people aren't used to meeting people. Or people aren't used to like
putting themselves out there.
yeah, like how do I navigate a conversation?
Yeah.
You can tell when people are kind of like impressed by if someone asks a couple good questions, like, whoa, you asked really, really good questions. It's like questions
I just
are like
asked something other than what do you do for work?
Yeah, it's like it wasn't that crazy of a question. But there's this almost like it feels like socially the bar has been lowered because people interact so much through social media that as soon as someone surpasses like a C+ when it comes to like social aptitude, it's like an impressive thing. But yeah, let's give some tips. Let's talk about that a bit. Like what would you say are like some keys to a good first impression?
I think the first one that comes to mind for me is like genuinely approaching people you meet as like friendships.
Yeah.
And I think this is important because when you've been single for a while, it can, or maybe even not a while, it can be easy to see like
everyone as a prospect.
Yeah, everyone as a prospect. And I feel
Could it
like...
be you? Could it be you? Could it be you?
I feel like when I met you, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, could it be you? But I did have the thought of like, oh, I'm kind of interested in him because I remember thinking, like you're handsome or whatever. But also I had the thought of, oh, I think he's too old for me.
Yeah.
Because at the time, me and Daniel are only 1 year apart, but at the time, he looks almost older than he does now. For some reason, I don't know. It was your hair or something.
It's a curious case of Benjamin Button.
He used to have more of like a bald fade. So, anyways, so I remember thinking, oh, I'm kind of interested, but he's probably too old for me. He'll think I'm like a child.
Yeah.
At the time, I was 20. I was thinking you were like 30.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but like approaching, and I think maybe because I thought you were older, then I started to approach you more as a friend.
Yeah.
And I think approaching people as friends is really helpful because it makes you more relaxed. And it helps you, it kind of ties into my next point, be yourself more.
Yeah.
It kind of helps you like just genuinely show who you are because you're not worried about impressing someone romantically.
Yeah.
But you're just worried about, you're not even worried about anything. You just want to show them who you are as a friend, who you are as a person. You're not like putting your best foot forward. You're just relaxed, in a relaxed state. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I think that it's so important to have like go-to questions you have. I kind of alluded to it before, but it's like, I think that there's something special when you're meeting someone about being able to ask them something that causes them to think or reflect upon their life or themselves or the way they see the world in a unique way.
Yeah.
So like instead of just asking like what do you do, it's like asking what in your life right now are you most passionate about?
Yeah.
Or what's exciting you most right now about work?
Yeah.
Or you know what I mean?
And we actually have a good video on what to ask on a first date, so we'll link that below.
Yeah.
I think that would be helpful. I know you're not necessarily on a first date when you're like first meeting someone, but it's still helpful to like brainstorm questions and things.
I think this idea of like disarming like social situations through like productive questions is really helpful, whether you're interested in someone or not. It's like a relationships, like platonic and romantic relationships thing. It's not just like, oh, when you're pursuing someone, I don't know, like I don't think I have a sacred view around like, I think you're just like, oh, like getting to know someone romantically versus getting to know someone as a friend. It's like oftentimes friendships evolve into relationships and you kind of just let things organically evolve that way. I think that what's important for people to do as well when it comes to like kind of building a sense of, I guess, direction or clarity surrounding how they engage first impressions is watch people in your life, like whether it be family or friends, who are known to make good first impressions.
And learn from them.
Yeah, ask yourself, what makes their first impressions so strong?
Yeah.
Is it because they smile more than the average person? Is it because they allow their eyes to light up when they see someone who they're meeting for the very first time? Is it because their posture is better? Is it because they're more interested in learning about the person than speaking about themselves? Like, what is it about this person who is really good at first impressions that makes them so good?
Yeah, and like don't copy them in a way that's not yourself.
Yeah.
But adapt it for like, okay, how could I use these tools to be me? I think something, this is like something I learned when I was serving at a restaurant. I feel like I used to go up to tables, like my first interaction with them, and just be like, hi, my name's Mariah, like, can I get you something to drink? Like, really chill. But then I realized when I came to the table with more energy, like positive energy, the table would respond like really, really well. And so instead I'd be like, hey guys, how's it going? My name's Mariah. And like just, it wouldn't be not myself, but it'd be like a lot more energy, a lot more like putting myself out there, a lot more friendly. And then they would mirror that response. And so like, know that the way you go through the world really has an impact on how people are responding to you. And I think that's a powerful tool for first impressions.
Yeah,
for sure.
and I think it's so important for people to like get a sense of what they're good at.
Yeah.
Or maybe things that they get complimented for, or things that they see as a strength, and use it to your advantage, like in a very kind of socially beneficial way. So for example, if you're really good at complimenting people, you just observe nice things about them, use that. Like say like, oh, I really like your sweater.
Yeah.
Or I really like the glasses you're wearing.
Yeah.
And that really sometimes disarms people. Maybe it's your smile. Maybe it's the way you ask questions. Maybe it's your humor. It's like, don't allow those things to be like silent when you're meeting someone for the first time. I think sometimes we wait until we know someone well to bring that part. It's like, be funny, like be smiley, whatever it is that is a strength of yours. Be that in your first impressions.
I think something I just thought about too is if you're struggling to be like, okay, I know something's like off about the way I come off to people, but I just don't know what it is. Like, ask your trusted friends and family just to watch you for maybe a couple weeks, and you have to be in a good spot, okay? Like, you can't be being all offended by what they say or insecure by what they say, but I would say just ask them like, hey, can you watch me interact with people and just tell me like what I could do better, or maybe what I'm doing that's like off-putting to people. And your friends, hopefully you have great friends that are kind and will help you out that way. I think that's a good tool.
I think that's really good. I have a friend who he doesn't mean to do this, but it's just his wiring, his makeup, like he comes off as intense. And he doesn't mean to be intense. So something that he started
just kidding.
Something that he started doing. I have a friend, a random friend.
Daniel sometimes comes off intense, but it's a good thing. I
have a friend out there who typically comes off as intense. No, it's a real friend. And something that he's done to soften that is slow down his speech. And smile more. And I think that came out of feedback as well. So like there are people in your life who know things about you that aren't detrimental. But just you never like solicited the feedback, so they don't give it. And so it's so important for people to really be like, hey, bro, like, is there anything weird about how I come off in the first impressions? Or when I just met your friend that you just introduced me to, was there anything I did that was like a bit off-putting or whatever? I think it's so important to ask people. I had a question for you. Okay, when it comes to online dating over the last, I would say 10 years, has become more and more of a thing. Where people, or like so a space, an environment where people are making first impressions. Is there any advice you would give someone outside of what we said? Because my assumption is that like being yourself, making a friend first, asking good questions, all applies to online dating. But is there anything that's unique to online dating that you'd maybe advise someone to consider doing or not doing when making first impressions?
I think running your profile past someone like a friend is probably pretty important. And just being like, hey, does this actually reflect me? Because of course in online dating, you're gonna put your best foot forward. Like, that's just natural. But you shouldn't be putting up pictures that don't look like you. You shouldn't be lying about your height. You shouldn't be like, misrepresenting who you are.
And I think that like, it's like, does this represent me? And then it's like, the second question is like, does this represent me well? Because I think that people can be honest to a fault. Almost to the point where it's like, do you even like yourself? Like, do you, like, why are you so mean to yourself? You're not that bad.
Like, I don't want to be with you either.
Like, I think people used to use the term catfish to explain like someone who looks better online than they do in person. And I think sometimes people reverse catfish, where it's like, well, you're way better than you
put off.
So it's like making sure that you're honest, but also honestly flattering.
I think too, like, something that just you should name, it's really hard to represent yourself accurately online. Not in terms of looks, but in terms of like your personality coming through text. Like, I remember when we first met, you were confused by my like online persona, like just through Instagram, because it was so unlike me in person. And it was. At the time I was
You
young.
were a reverse catfish for sure.
Yeah, I
you
was
were better in person than
younger
online.
and like just immature, and I just thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And now looking back, it's like, okay, I don't actually want people to see me that way.
But I feel like the same could be said about me, because I remember how I texted was so professional and intense.
Like-
I remember you guys were like, Mariah and her friends were wondering, like, do you even have fun? Like,
Yeah.
Like, can you dance? Or
Like
can you,
we'd
do you
say
laugh and
something,
stuff?
we'd think it was the funniest thing ever, and he'd just respond like, haha. And we'd be like,
And-
wait, did you even
And
laugh?
that was me like being polite, because it
Yeah.
wasn't that funny. Like, not in a savage, not in like a, sorry, that sounded, it was more like, oh, this is like, in a social setting, it'd be like a smile. I wouldn't be laughing.
No,
or
I
something.
know, but like
So I just,
me
like-
and my friends, the way we texted was like we'd be straight faced, but on texting it's capital letters. Ha ha ha.
Sometimes all a text response warrants, when it comes to a joke that is like
Mid.
average,
Yeah.
is like AHA.
No, you're right, and now I agree with you more, and I text more like you now.
Yeah, I'm not like a LOL.
I definitely use a lot more like periods and commas and all
Anyways.
that. But like, yeah, I think, okay, what I meant to say is that communicating yourself online is really, really
Yeah.
hard to do. It's not an easy thing to do. So just know that your first shot at an online profile or your first shot at like representing yourself online probably isn't gonna be the best
Yeah.
one. So why not have friends try to come in and help you?
Yeah,
And
I think the last thing I'd say too about the like online thing is like, you're okay to like drop in the odd caveat
yeah,
when you're texting with someone. So for example, if you're writing like something that's sarcastic,
yeah,
you can be like, sorry, my sarcasm doesn't come through super well
yeah,
when I'm texting.
yeah.
Or that was meant to be sarcastic.
Yeah.
Like, because the person's getting to know you. So it's like, as you're talking back and forth with them, feel free to drop in those caveats. So they're like, oh, that was a joke. Oh, I'm starting to get a sense of their humor. And it's like, just like with first impressions online, people have to make the decision whether they like that version of humor,
Yeah.
whether they like that personality
Yeah,
trait
yeah.
or not. And I think that you don't change the way you are in order to be more like, almost like palatable to the person you're trying to.
Yes.
It's like you have to continue to be true to like your personality and temperament, so that
It's
the
gonna
person
come
who,
out eventually.
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
the person who decides to meet up with you or get to know you more is getting to know your true self, and they're not like surprised. It's like, yeah, they're not like given a bit of a bait and switch
Right.
socially
when they meet you in
up
person, and they're
yeah.
like, whoa, they're really sarcastic. That came
Yeah,
out
it's
of
like,
nowhere.
whoa,
Yeah,
chill.
yeah. Yeah.
But anyways, those are my thoughts. Any
Yeah.
other thoughts before we go?
That's all the thoughts I have. Good luck out there
Yeah.
with your first impressions. Use your friends and family. They love you and they want to help you.
And you're not as awkward as you think you are.
No.
I feel like that word's for someone.
Yeah, you're not as awkward as you think you are. Just put yourself out there. Everyone feels awkward. You just gotta own it. That's just the way it is.
Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe.